so fucking special. I wish I was special. I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't care if it hurts. I wanna have control. I want a perfect body. I want a perfect soul. I want you to notice when I'm not around. I'm so fucking special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. Whatever makes you happy, whatever you want. You're so fucking special. Wish I was special. I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. keeps me in darkness. I'm dusting the outside, my chamber into the danger. I'm pushing my limits high to the red line and over. Why have I waited so long? For so long, 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 for so long. Why have we waited? Why have we waited? Yeah. Well, it's hard to be happy in a world that's so cruel, with the weak just getting weaker and the powerful feud. The children go hungry, the soldiers stand by, yeah. Lay down your weapons, take hold of your lives, and when will we learn? It's hate that breeds hate, only love is the cure. Don't leave it too late, no. Get up and feel it, the truth it won't wait. We choose to do nothing, we take all the blame, yeah. Why have I waited? Why have we waited? Yeah, yeah. For so long, 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 for so
Hello everybody, this is Britt with Mythril Media, reaching out to you from quarantine in Norwich, Connecticut. My partner Gabe is joining me behind the camera as usual. In recent weeks, the #1 priority of our country's media outlets has been rightfully so focused on the COVID-19 outbreak, which has been affecting millions of people worldwide. With that being said, we at Mythril Media feel a responsibility to acknowledge some current political events regarding our upcoming presidential election, as well as the discussion that has been taking place in communities across the political spectrum this week as a result. With respect to the fact that honest reporting is unbiased reporting, I will only be doing this through the words and actions of those at the very center of these events. I will start by reading an excerpt from a recent Bernie Sanders press conference, where he announced the suspension of his 2020 presidential campaign. Quote, "I wish I could give you better news, but I think you know the truth. and that is that we are now some 300 delegates behind Vice President Biden, and the path toward victory is virtually impossible. So, while we are winning the ideological battle, and while we are winning the support of so many young people and working people throughout the country, I have concluded that this is the battle for the Democratic nomination will not be successful. And so today, I am announcing the suspension of my campaign. While this campaign is coming to an end, our movement is not. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us that, quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice," end quote. The fight for justice is what our campaign has been about. The fight for justice is what our movement remains about. Today, I congratulate Joe Biden, a very decent man, who I will work with to move our progressive ideas forward. On a practical note, let me also say this. I will stay on the ballot in all remaining states and continue to gather delegates. While Vice President Biden will be the nominee, we must continue working to assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions. Then, together, standing united, we will go forward to defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. And we will fight to elect strong progressives at every level of government, from Congress to the school board. As I hope all of you know, this race has never been about me. I ran for the presidency because I believe that as a president I could accelerate and institutionalize the progressive changes that we are all building together. And if we keep organizing and fighting, I have no doubt that is exactly what will happen. While the path may be slower now, we will change this nation and, with like-minded friends around the globe, change the entire world. End quote. Starting just a few days before this announcement, Joe Biden enjoyed a week of strong endorsements from party leaders, including Georgia House Representative and civil rights leader John Lewis, who during his endorsement highly suggested that Biden choose a black woman running mate. Massachusetts Senator and former nominee candidate Elizabeth Warren, who withheld an endorsement for weeks following her own campaign suspension, as well as Biden's former candidacy partner Barack Obama, and, as of a few days ago, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders himself. Notably withholding her endorsement at this moment is New York House Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She recently stated that she's not ready to endorse former Vice President Joe Biden's White House bid, adding that the Democrats' teams have been in touch. Speaking in a web interview with the authors of Political Playbook, Ocasio-Cortez said that while she still wants policy assurances from Biden, in the end it will be important for Democrats to support the party's nominee in November. She further specified that she would like to see Biden take more progressive stances on healthcare, immigration, and climate change, repeating her statement that her team had been, quote, having conversations with Biden's team and trying to figure out what some of these policy conversations will be, end quote. On Wednesday morning, the progressive congresswoman called in to The View, where she once again insisted that she plans to rally behind presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. While Ocasio-Cortez stopped short of a full-on endorsement, she said that the choice between Biden and Trump is an issue of life and death, particularly for people of color. When asked if she plans to endorse former Vice President Joe Biden, as Sanders did last week, AOC shifted focus to the larger issue at hand. Quote, right now, the stakes are too high when it comes to another 4 years against Trump. We have kids in cages. We have a pandemic response that happened way too late that has cost us lives. I think it's really important that we rally behind our Democratic nominee in November, concluded Ocasio-Cortez. Joy Behar of The View then asked about progressives who plan to vote third party rather than choosing between Biden and Trump. Quote, what do you say to these people? She asked, noting that Biden has made some efforts to appeal to progressives on certain issues. What's really important is that we do realize that at the end of the day, one of these two candidates are going to be elected President of the United States, replied Ocasio-Cortez. It's either going to be Joe Biden or it's going to be Donald Trump. However, Ocasio-Cortez has urged moderate Democrats to, quote, communicate some empathy to progressives who feel that their voices are not reflected in Biden's platform. Quote, Biden can go further, she said, adding that the candidate's plans to lower Medicare to 60 and other concessions he's made to progressives are not necessarily enough. Quote, what we shouldn't do is recreate this dynamic where we are finger wagging and nagging people into voting because it's not a way of generating enthusiasm. One thing we can do is improve the policies we have as a party to tell young people, to tell all sorts of people, we see you and we have a plan for you, and we're going to create hope for all sorts of communities in the United States. End quote. Ocasio-Cortez also recently stated that it is legitimate to talk about sexual assault claims a former staffer has made against Vice President Joe Biden. Since making his announcement to suspend his campaign, Bernie Sanders had also decided it was appropriate to once again address the public in an interview on Tuesday with the Associated Press, in which Sanders said it would be irresponsible for his supporters to refuse to back Biden, warning that it would lead to President Trump's re-election. Quote, I believe that it's irresponsible for anybody to say, well, I disagree with Joe Biden, and therefore I'm not going to be involved, Sanders said. And with all that in mind, I would like to leave these individuals' words to speak for themselves and move on to some Mythril Media announcements. My first announcement of the night is that I have to apologize to anyone who was looking forward to the Easter egg video, because it was unfortunately canceled. In spite of being warned by my constituent that I was allowing the amount of footage I was compiling for my super detailed Easter egg dyeing tutorial to vastly surpass the storage capacity of the iPad, in which we do all of our editing and therefore creating a serious mess, I pressed onward and fudged the video with my own hubris. So we have since thought of some simple workarounds for bringing you longer videos, such as shooting them in a way that considers the fact that they will need to be edited and posted in a smaller and more manageable segments in order to be completed within a reasonable amount of time whatsoever. So as I said, sorry for anyone who was looking forward to that. I promise all of you and my poor technician behind the camera here that I will not make that mistake again. And with that being said, right, I would also like to announce that we have recently posted the first half of my 40-minute time-lapsed Spring Lantern D&D mini painting tutorial, which is the first of lots of art-based content to come. You can find that on this YouTube channel, and part 2 should be posted very soon. We will also be posting some more game content. My New Horizons Animal Crossing Village is finally ready to share with the world, so we're planning on creating some of that content for you, along with some gameplay from Monster Hunter and Persona Q. Monster Hunter being on the Switch and Persona Q being on the 3DS. So thanks for listening to this week's update, and I hope you stay tuned for my continued reading of Vivian story Unbowed by Cassandra Khaw. Hello everybody, welcome to the second reading now of Unbowed by Cassandra Khaw. This is a story that you can find for free if you'd like to read along on the Magic the Gathering website under their lore section. Very easy to find. Last week when we started this story, we found Vivian, who is a ranger druid from the plane of Scala. She is a planeswalker who carries a mystical artifact called the Arc Bow that summons creatures for Vivian when in battle. Most famously, every creature from the plane, her home plane of Scala. She was with Frederick, a vampire. They were headed to the city of Luno, which is a city which is ruled by a church that is the ruling class. It's a vampiric church. We are on the plane of Ixalan, which is an island, sort of Caribbean-like plane, except, this is Magic the Gathering, it has dinosaurs, pirates, vampires, merfolk, the whole like. So we'll be picking up with Vivian and Frederick as they enter the city of Luno. Vivian sat silent as Frederick unrolled reams of praise to Luno, gesticulating and genuflecting at the splendor of both country and capital. He narrated with indecorous gusto the preeminence of the sovereign couple, their virtues, the circumstances that precipitated such an exquisite union. Then he went on to alphabetize their accomplishments, chasing compliments with more of the same. It was all, Vivian thought to herself, so gauche. That there were lotus flowers laced through the balustrades of the city, gardens charting the plunge of its towers like the grasping hands of a desperate lover. Trees parasitized by softly luminescent blossoms was beside the point. At best, it only accented Vivian's disgust with the island nation. Their air reeked of excess. Luno was artifice and arrogance, its every last wonder a contrivance. Its buildings were white marble, all dainty cafes wherever Vivian turned, all museums and shop fronts, showcasing rich gowns and towering wigs. Luno resembled someone's dream of a city, clean and cultured and bereft of common things. Things like butcher shops and bakers and bailiffs patrolling crackled, cobbled lanes. Only in the margins, only where Luno could tuck such eyesores away, hidden behind alley or crooked lanes, could Vivian see where humanity might toil. If there was any true beauty here, it was a piteous thing, strangled and suffocated by the whimsy of its undead tenants. But Vivian divulged nothing of her ruminations, only hooked fingers along the string of the arc bow and smiled dispassionately, an expression her companion interpreted as invitation. "What is it like where you come from?" Frederick traced a finger along the knob of bone that rose from Vivian's brown wrist, the motion precise as the pleating of his lace jabot, and turned her arm onto its back. His touch wandered up the tributaries of her veins, while Luno, dusklit and haunting, flaunted itself through the window. Vivian tried not to think of an antlered silhouette rising into the sky, tried not to think of the screaming, the pop of skin as it crisps and breaks, tried not to think of how soundless it became as the world burned to white. She tried not to think of fire. "It was beautiful where I came from," she whispered, and the carriage rolled on. She counted the bodies on the wall until the numbers fled from her mind, and then Vivian murmured the numbers like a chant. For one terrible moment, the planeswalker could understand Nicol Bolas, the death of Scala, the end of everything she'd known and loved. Here, flanked by the corpses of 100 extinct species, their bodies threaded with wires, fat starch and stiffened by a taxidermist's concoctions, the antechamber gold and garish against the waxen sheen of fur, Vivian could think of nothing but the desire to see all this gone. "Like nothing else? No?" Frederick's grasping hand on the crook of her elbow again, fingers locking around the joint. "The Hall of Treasures is a church unto itself, a worship of the natural world." Vivian peeled herself from his grip. "Your idea of how to demonstrate reverence is very different from mine." "As it should be. We are not creatures of the same world." Noblemen and their entourages drifted past the pair, effete and absurd in their towering wigs, minarets of hair teased into strange, unsubtle configurations. And that is what is so beautiful about existence. Beauty isn't something to be pinned to a wall. "Oh, absolutely not." Frederick smacked his lips. "Better if it is allowed to remain alive, beautifully framed by filigree. I remember when they brought home the Monstrosaur breeding pair. What a joy that was. It was an event, as they say.
And they were such generous guests of the royal menagerie too. Some animals, they simply expire, unwilling to put up a show. But there was so much theater with the pair, so much bombast. The male wasn't halfway as hardy as his counterpart. He died too quickly, and she followed after, wasting away in a show of tragedy, so profound it was immortalized in a manuscript. Vivian swallowed around her rage. Show me more of Luneau. The perfumed court lived up to its nickname. Its aristocracy was anointed with ambergris and rose water. Its knights dusted with salt and musk and holy incense. Even the supplicants and the servants, loose-wigged and cotton-garbed, stank of powders, always more powders, a glazing of particles that turned their skin nacreous in the evening's blue light. Vivian pressed a handkerchief to her nose and choked on its odor. Gagging, she ran fingers along the edges, discovering too late the potpourri sewn into the hems. Nothing in Luneau was sacred. Nothing here was natural. Mademoiselle Reed, are you all right? Frederick extended his arm. In the half hour they were apart, he somehow found time to exchange his hunting attire for a more flamboyant display. Ruffles and stuffed breeches, rendered in lilac and cream-colored satin, made bulbous his silhouette. I'm fine. She threaded her arm through his, folding the handkerchief into quarters. I suppose I was just dumbstruck by the glories of your homeland. In that case, do not let me distract you too much. Luneau demands worship. There is nothing else in Ixalan quite like her. He leaned in, voice sharpened to conspiracy. The Baron of Verneau, he believes there are giants among the lizards we hunt. Gods, creatures bigger than even language can encompass. One day, we will have them for the royal menagerie, and after that, history will never be able to name a rival. I see. Frederick sniffed. Pigment stained his cheeks. Not pink as was traditional, a rosy counterfeit of vitality, but a blush of turquoise which evoked in Vivian the memory of a crab-nibbled carcass she'd once fished from the sea. Ah, mademoiselle, I'm sure you think the patriotism unwarranted, but you've seen the royal menagerie, so surely you must understand. Anger, a frisson across her skin. The arcbow seemed to thrum against the swoop of her spine, and for a moment it subsumed her, a hunger like a well with no end. It wanted to be knocked. No, she wanted the relic's power knocked, and angled at Luneau's heart. The arcbow loathed this place. Vivian knew the way the oak and the alder knew to rouse themselves in spring, the way fire knew to find the fat within one's flesh. There would be no walking away from Luneau. Together, they would see it gone. But not yet. Not yet. They needed to wait. And so do you. See you in the next episode, where we will find out what happens at the perfumed court. See you then.